Literate Discussions with M. David Hornbuckle.
Hello and welcome to Literate Discussions. I am David Hornbuckle. Today we're going to be joined by educator and writer Nelson Maddaloni from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. All right, hi, Nelson.
Hi.
All right, so we're going to talk about Walt Whitman's Song of Myself.
Yes.
So just to give you a little bit of context, American lit from the Civil War to the present, and Whitman is the first author that we talk about. And one of the things I always talk about is how he's really the first true American poet who's like deliberately writing in a style that is not based on European styles of poetry. And I think it's interesting that one of the many titles of Song of Myself before he settled on Song of Myself was, got a footnote here. In the 1856 edition, Whitman titled it Poem of Walt Whitman, an American.
Okay.
So
I did some research. I did come across that myself, and if you don't mind me elaborating or repeating what you said, I do think you're right. I think this is one of the first wholly unique American poems. I guess following from the Transcendentalist movement, he's sort of building off of that, which I feel was a wholly unique American experience.
That ties into the Romantic movement in general, which is, I think, Transcendentalism is kind of the American version of.
I agree. Would you argue more, as much a philosophical movement as it was a literary movement? This kind of approach to nature, approach to oneself. If we go with Emerson, we go with Thoreau, and that line of thinking. And I know it's tangential, but I think it's relevant to the context of this poem.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's tangential at all because of course, the Transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson had basically put out the call in the American Scholar for there to be a new type of American poetry that was distinctly American. And Walt Whitman was deliberately, I think, very actively answering that call, saying,
I agree.
Here I am.
Yeah, and he is.
I'm the guy you're looking for.
And I tend to think he does fill that bill quite beautifully with his ultimate project, Leaves of Grass, which this is from.
Leaves of Grass was the book that included the original version of Song of Myself and several other poems that were at first unnamed, and he kept revising Leaves of Grass throughout his life. The final version was in the 1881, I think.
Yes, and I think he is the poet-philosopher that captures the American experience and what would it later be built up into later uniquely American movements throughout American literary history, especially the Beat movement, which I don't know if you're covering that in this class. Are you covering any?
I do actually. Later on in the semester we talk about the Beats and we read Howl as well as an excerpt from On the Road.
Okay.
So, in fact, one of the things I actually talk about when we get to Howl is how it is similar to Song of Myself in many ways.
I completely agree. I think this poem and Whitman in general is fundamental to the American literary writing experience. And as a writer, I think this is an absolutely breathtaking work. This is a bearing of oneself poem, I feel. But also not, I mean, I think Whitman's work is very much, as you said, it was a Song of Walt Whitman, very much a laying it all out there poem.
And he certainly does lay it all out there. Yeah.
Yes. Most certainly.
He contains multitudes.
Yes. And
let's talk about section number 6. This is one of the very famous sections of the poem where he says, "A child said, 'What is the grass?' fetching it to me with full hands. How could I answer the child? I do not know what it is any more than he. I guess it must be the flag of my disposition out of hopeful green stuff woven. Or I guess it is the handkerchief of the Lord, a scented gift and remembrancer designedly dropped, bearing the owner's name some way in the corners that we may see and remark and say whose. Or I guess the grass is itself a child, the produced babe of the vegetation. Or I guess it is a uniform hieroglyphic, and it means sprouting alike in broad zones and narrow zones, growing among black folks as among white. Canuck, Tuckahoe, Congressman, Cuff, I give them the same, I receive them the same. And now it seems to me the beautiful uncut hair of graves. So that's and it goes on from there, but I think that's one of the sections where he actually talks about grass.
Yes, yes.
To connect to the title of the book that this poem comes from,
Of course.
and elaborates on why that's an important symbol for him.
Yeah, I agree. I know I keep saying philosophical, but I think this work is a work of philosophy as much as it is poetry.
I think Whitman would agree with you.
Yeah, though he's talking about multiple blades of grass, each one is uniquely different. He says, and where it grows, how it grows. And I think the individualistic experience is kind of crucial to this whole work.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And of course, he, one of the other things that this poem is kind of famous for, and Whitman in general, are the never ending lists of different people doing their
different things.
Doing their different things. Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think, he wants to call attention to, it's like he wants to include everything in this poem, like the whole country, basically, maybe the whole world.
Yes, I completely agree.
He wants to emphasize individualism, but he also wants to identify with everybody.
Yes.
Right? So he talks about the kind of the similarity. He's talking about how we're all the same, but also how we're all different.
Yeah, and I think that's very important for getting to Whitman. I'd also like to bring up some biographical elements, such as the sense of his homosexuality, which I think is also part of this uniqueness to Whitman.
Oh, too. Yeah. Whitman's sexuality is definitely is really relevant to this poem.
Yes.
And including that post passage we just read, and then there's other parts that are controversial, considered pornographic, by some critics.
And that goes in hand with the individualistic aspect, where he is definitely himself. He's definitely Walt Whitman, but he is trying to connect all of us together in our own unique individual experience. If that makes sense.
Right. It's the song of myself. It's a song of Walt Whitman, but it's also the song of everybody.
Yeah.
Right. And because he is Walt Whitman, but he's also everybody.
Yeah.
And everything.
And I want to bring up the notion of empathy with Whitman too.
Yeah, empathy is probably something that I think is very important to this poem. I think that talking about empathy is why you see him listing all these different people, doing these different activities. I think that these lists are basically acts of empathy.
I completely agree. I completely agree. And I think I want to talk as a writer myself, because I think empathy is one of the most important things to the writer's toolkit, or in being a writer, because being able to empathize with, and that's one of the great things about literature, or at least very good literature, in my opinion.
I would say that it's basically what literature is for.
Yes.
And, like David Foster Wallace famously said that novels are about what it feels like to be a human being.
Yes.
And that's talking about empathy. But yeah, it's been good to just kind of bounce some ideas about this poem off of you. And
certainly.
And I think that my students will appreciate it. So thanks for making the call.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me on. All right.
I'll see you later.
All right. Take it easy, man.
See you.